The October morning in Clear Lake was unusually hot for this time of year. The sun was scorching hot, making the asphalt melt under the wheels of the police car. Detective Afia Drags drove the car down the winding road that led to the most expensive mansion in the city. The call had come in at 6 in the morning. The corpse of a young woman in the home of local millionaire Lavelle Dorkins. Afia knew Dorkins as well as anyone in Clear Lake. 71 years old, fortune made in real estate, an eccentric widower who had recently shocked the public by getting engaged to a girl 48 years younger than himself. Shanice Weeford, 23, a former bartender at the Blue Moon, a local bar where people with nothing to lose gathered. Afia herself grew up in a similarly dysfunctional neighborhood, but managed to get out, get an education, and become a detective. Many from her childhood weren't so fortunate. The driveway to the Dorkins mansion looped between manicured flower beds and ornamental shrubs. 2 patrol cars and the medical examiner's van were already parked at the front door. Afia parked, and wiping sweat from her forehead, headed toward the house. "Detective Drags," the young officer Ray greeted her. "The body is upstairs in the master bedroom." "Who discovered it?" Afia asked, putting on her latex gloves. "The housekeeper, Latosha Davidge. She came in as usual at 5:30 in the morning and found the victim." Afia nodded and entered the house. It was cool inside thanks to the air conditioners running at full blast. The luxurious interior was stunning. Marble floors, antique furniture, heavy framed paintings. But now it was not a house, but a crime scene. Climbing the wide staircase to the second floor, Afia made her way to the master bedroom. The room was huge, with panoramic windows overlooking the lake. A king-sized bed stood against the far wall. On it, spreading her arms, lay a young black woman in a silk nightgown. Her eyes were wide open, and a dark red stain was spreading across her chest. "Shanice Weeford, 23 years old," said medical examiner Marcus Webb, still taking notes. "Preliminary cause of death is a gunshot wound to the chest. Time of death was between 23 hours last night and 2 o'clock this morning." Afia examined the body carefully. A massive diamond ring sparkled on the ring finger of the victim's left hand. On the bedside table was a photograph of Shanice and Lavelle, smiling as they stood against some tropical landscape. "Where is Mr. Dorkins?" Afia asked. "In the office downstairs," one of the patrolmen replied. "Officer Parker is with him." "And the weapon?" "They haven't found them yet. Forensics is combing the house and grounds." Afia took another look around the bedroom. An overturned vase of flowers lay on the floor beside the bed, water soaked into the expensive carpet. On the dressing table were numerous bottles of perfume and cosmetics. In the corner of the room was an ajar door to a dressing room filled with designer clothes. "No sign of forced entry," Officer Ray said. "The alarm was not triggered." Afia nodded and went downstairs to talk to Lavelle Dorkins. The homeowner's office was austere. Dark wood paneling, leather chairs, a massive desk. An older man sat hunched over with his hands on his head. Despite the early hour, he was fully dressed. Expensive suit, tie, cufflinks. "Mr. Dorkins," Afia sat down across from him. "I'm Detective Afia Drags. I need to ask you a few questions." Lavelle raised his head. His eyes were red but dry. His face was gaunt, his skin an unhealthy gray hue. "I didn't kill her," he said in a hoarse voice. "I'm not charging you with murder yet, Mr. Dorkins. Just tell me what happened last night." Lavelle took a deep breath. "We had dinner together about 8 o'clock. Then I went into the office to work. I had an important deal to do." He stopped, as if realizing the absurdity of the phrase in the context of what had happened. "Anyway, I worked late. Shanice said she was tired and was going to bed. It was about 10 o'clock in the evening. I stayed here until 2 in the morning. Then I went to the guest bedroom so as not to wake her up. In the morning, I was awakened by Latosha's screams." "You slept in separate rooms?" Afia clarified. "Sometimes." Lavelle rubbed the bridge of his nose. "I have insomnia. I didn't want to disturb her with my nocturnal activities." "Did you hear the gunshot?" "No." He shook his head. "The study is in the other wing of the house. And, He was silent again. "Why, Mr. Dorkins?" "I take sleeping pills. Strong ones. Once I'm asleep, I can't be woken up by an explosion." Afia made a note in her notebook. "Do you have a weapon?" Lavelle nodded. A Smith & Wesson revolver. I keep it in a safe in my bedroom. The same bedroom where Shanice was killed? Yeah, he swallowed. But I didn't reach for it, I swear to you. Who knew the combination to the safe? Just me and… Lavelle hesitated. And Shanice. I gave her the combination last week. She said she was afraid to be alone in a house this big. Afia nodded, making another note. When was the last time you checked your weapons? I don't remember, a month ago maybe. And you haven't had any conflicts with Shanice lately? Lavelle frowned. What do you mean? Quarrels, disagreements, maybe you learned something that upset or angered you? No, he shook his head. We were fine. We were supposed to get married in a month. We were planning a honeymoon in Bali. At that moment, there was a knock on the office door, and a tall, thin, middle-aged woman in a housekeeper's uniform appeared on the doorstep. Excuse me, she said quietly. I brought coffee for Mr. Dorkins. Thank you, Latosha. Lavelle nodded. Afia stood up. Miss Davidge, I was just about to talk to you. Can we go to the kitchen? Latosha nodded, placed the tray of coffee on the table, and walked out with Afia. They walked through the spacious living room into the equally spacious kitchen. It was clean and tidy, despite the morning's tragedy. Sit down, please. Afia pointed to a chair by the kitchen island. Tell us how you discovered the body. Latosha sat down, folding her hands in her lap. Her movements were precise, polished, but there was a deep sadness in her eyes. I came as usual at 5:30 in the morning. First I made breakfast, then I went upstairs to wake Miss Shanice. She asked me to wake her at 6 to be ready for morning yoga. I knocked, but she did not answer. Latosha's voice trembled. I saw her blood, and I knew she was dead. I screamed, ran to the guest bedroom to see Mr. Dorkins, and then I called the police. How long have you worked for Mr. Dorkins? 22 years. I came here when the first Mrs. Dorkins was still alive. And how did you feel about Shanice? Latosha tensed slightly. She was a kind girl, young, cheerful. Mr. Dorkins was fine with her. But, Afia sensed an understatement. But that's okay, Detective. I'm glad Mr. Dorkins is happy again after the death of his first wife. Didn't you find it odd that a girl 48 years younger was interested in an older man? Latosha pressed her lips together. Mr. Dorkins is a decent man and very generous. I understand, Afia nodded. Tell me, have you noticed anything unusual in Shanice's behavior lately? Maybe she was nervous, worried about something? Latosha thought for a moment. She often talked on the phone in a whisper, and always cut the conversation short if I entered the room. Do you know who she was talking to? No, but… Latosha hesitated. But, a couple times I heard her call the person she was talking to Jay. I think that's her cousin Javonta. Afia made a note. Javonta Pinnix? Latosha nodded. He's come here a few times. Mr. Dorkins didn't like him. Said he was nothing but trouble. At that moment, there was a screech of brakes outside. Afia went to the window and saw an old, shabby Chevy pull up to the house at a high rate of speed. A young man in baggy jeans and a t-shirt that read Clear Lake High School jumped out of the car. He rushed toward the front door, but was stopped by the officers. Where is she? Where's my sister? His screams could be heard through the closed windows. It looks like Javonta is already here. Latosha pressed her lips together. Afia stepped out onto the porch. Javonta Pinnix was gesticulating vigorously, trying to get past the police officers. Mr. Pinnix, Afia said loudly. I'm Detective Draggs. If you'll calm down, we can talk. Javonta turned toward her. His eyes were bloodshot and tears glistened on his cheeks. Where is Shanice? What happened to her? I'm sorry, Afia said. Your sister is dead. Javonta froze as if he had been struck. Then his face contorted with rage. It was him! That old bastard killed her! He raced toward the house again. I knew this would happen. I warned her! The officers struggled to restrain the enraged man. Mr. Pinnix, if you don't calm down, we will be forced to detain you, Afia said sternly. Right now, the best way to help your sister is to cooperate with the investigation. Javonta slowly lowered his arms. His shoulders slumped. Is she really dead? He whispered. Yes, Afia nodded. Shot this night. I'll kill him, Javonta gritted his teeth. I swear I'll kill that old man. How did you know something was wrong? Afia asked, ignoring the threat. Javonta wiped his tears with the back of his palm. Shanice always calls me at 6 in the morning. Every day. Today she didn't call. I dialed her 20 times, but the phone was unavailable. So I came here. Why did she call you every morning? Havanta looked away. Just to let me know she was okay. I was worried about her, especially since she got involved with that old man. Did you have reason to worry? Of course, Javanta exclaimed. She's 23, he's in his 70s. That's not normal. I told her he'd use her and then throw her away like garbage, but she only laughed and said she knew what she was doing. Afia watched Javanta's reactions carefully. Something about his behavior seemed odd. Not only grief and shock, but also fear, guilt. When was the last time you spoke to Shanice? Last night around 9 o'clock, Javanta answered after a short pause. What did you talk about? Nothing much. He shrugged his shoulders. Just an ordinary conversation. On the phone? Yes. And you didn't notice anything unusual in her mood? Javanta frowned. No. She was her usual self, cheerful, carefree. Afia made a note in her notebook. Something didn't add up. If Shanice had talked to her brother at 9 p.m. and was cheerful and carefree, what could have happened in the next few hours that led to her death? Mr. Pinnix, I need you to come with me to the station for a formal statement. I'm not going anywhere until I see this old murderer. Javanta started to get angry again. This is not up for discussion, Afia said firmly. Officer Ray, escort Mr. Pinnix to the car. As the officer led the resisting Javanta away, Afia returned to the house. In the hallway, she ran into Latosha, who was holding a tray of untouched coffee. He hasn't even touched it, the housekeeper said with sadness in her voice. I've never seen Mr. Dorkins so broken. Afia nodded. Miss Davidge, I will be back to ask further questions. In the meantime, please don't leave town. Latosha set the tray on the lobby table. Of course, Detective. I'm not going anywhere. Mr. Dorkins needs my help now more than ever. Afia stepped out onto the porch. The sun had risen higher and the heat was almost unbearable. She put on her sunglasses and walked to her car. This case promised to be complicated. A wealthy older man, a young bride, a jealous brother, a devoted housekeeper, the classic setup for a crime drama. But something told Afia that not everything was as simple as it seemed at first glance. She cast one last glance at the mansion. Behind one of the second-story windows stood Lavelle Dorkins, watching the goings-on in the courtyard. His figure seemed small and lonely against the luxurious interior. Murderer or victim of circumstance? Afia had yet to find out. Afia Dragg sat at her desk at the Clear Lake police station, poring over paperwork on the Shanice Weiford case. It had been 2 days since the body had been found, and there was no clarity. Ballistics tests confirmed that the girl had been killed with a Smith & Wesson revolver belonging to Lavelle Dorkins. The weapon was found in the bushes behind the house. Someone threw it out of the bedroom window. No fingerprints were found on the handle, which had been wiped off. Lavelle still denied any involvement in the murder, and Javanta Pinnix continued to accuse the old man of all sins. The situation resembled a classic love triangle, but Afia sensed there was more to it than that. She opened the folder with Shanice's information. 23 years old, born and raised in Clear Lake, a poor neighborhood in the city. Single mom died when the girl was 15. After that, Shanice lived with her aunt until she graduated from high school. Not brilliant, but decent grades. No college, straight to a job bartending at the Blue Moon. Afia sighed and reached for the phone. It was time to visit this bar and talk to those who knew Shanice before she met the millionaire. The Blue Moon was located in Clear Lake's industrial district, among abandoned warehouses and small workshops. The neon sign flickered dimly even at bright noon, as if the owner didn't bother to turn it off. Inside was dark and cool. A few regulars were sipping beer at the bar, ignoring Afia as she entered. Behind the counter stood a full woman in her 50s with bright red hair and a tired look. "What can I do for you?" she asked, looking at Afia appraisingly. "Detective Draggs," Afia showed her badge. "I'd like to ask a few questions about Shanice Weiford." The woman sighed heavily. "Poor girl. I'm Marla, the owner of this place. Shanice worked for me for almost 5 years." "What was she like?" Marla wiped her glass, staring off into the distance. "Smart, ambitious, always said she wasn't going to stay here forever, wanted more out of life than Blue Moon had to offer." "And that's when Lavelle Dorkins showed up?" Yeah, about a year ago. Came down here in his big black Cadillac. Looked like a beached fish. Guys like him don't usually come to our bar. Marla put her glass on the shelf. He took notice of Shanice right away. Ordered one bourbon after another just to get her to come to his table. Left a huge tip. And Shanice liked that? She laughed at him at first. Called him my pensioner. But then, Marla frowned. Then she started to take him more seriously. Especially after he'd brought her home from the restaurant wearing diamond earrings. Had she fallen for him or for his money? Marla shrugged her shoulders. Who knows? Shanice was a practical girl. Maybe it was the money that attracted her first, and then she really got attached to the old man. He treated her well, that was a fact. What about the other men in her life? Had she had any serious relationships before Lavelle? Marla hesitated. There was one guy, Tyrone Blackwell. They dated for about a year right before Dorkins showed up. Tyrone Blackwell? Afia made a note in her notebook. Isn't that the one connected to the Northern Boulevard gang? That's the one, Marla nodded. Shanice broke up with him when she started dating Dorkins. Tyrone was furious. Came here, threatened her. I had to call the police. And then what happened? Tyrone disappeared. There were rumors that he went to Chicago. But who knows? Afia asked a few more questions, and after thanking Marla, left the bar. In the parking lot, she noticed a familiar figure leaning against her car. Yavanta Pinnix. Are you following me, Mr. Pinnix? Afia asked, stepping closer. No, detective. Yavanta straightened up. Just knew you'd come here. Shanice loved this place. What are you trying to tell me? That Marla doesn't know? Giavanta lowered his voice. Dorkins is dangerous. He manipulated Shanice, controlled her every move. She was afraid of him. Is that why you advised her not to marry him? Yes, Giavanta nodded. But she didn't listen. She said it was her chance to get out of poverty. And what about Tyrone Blackwell? Giavanta tensed. What about him? Could he have had a motive to kill Shanice out of revenge? Tyrone had left town a long time ago, and he would never hurt her, despite all the threats. Afia looked at Giavanta carefully. There's something you're not telling me, Mr. Pinnix. What exactly is it that bothers you about Shanice and Lavelle's relationship, other than the age difference? Giavanta looked away. Just talk to Latosha. She's known Dorkins the longest. She can tell you the truth. With those words, he walked quickly to his car and drove off, leaving Afia puzzled. Back at the station, Afia requested financial statements for the accounts of Lavelle Dorkins and Shanice Weeford. The results came in a few hours and surprised the detective. Over the past 6 months, Lavelle had withdrawn over $300,000 in cash from his accounts. The amounts ranged from $5,000 to $15,000 and were withdrawn from various ATMs throughout the city. Even more interesting were Shanice's accounts. Before she met Lavelle, she lived from paycheck to paycheck. But over the past year, almost $100,000 had been deposited into her account. Some of it was transfers from Lavelle for personal expenses, as the payment designation indicated. But about $30,000 came in anonymous transfers from offshore accounts. Afia tapped her pen on the table thoughtfully. Where would a small-town bartender get offshore accounts? And what was Lavelle spending such large sums of cash on? The next morning, Afia went to the Dorkins mansion again. She wanted to talk to Latosha alone, without the presence of the landlord. Fortunately, Lavelle had left to see his lawyer, and the housekeeper was alone. Detective Draggs? Latosha led her into the house. Tea? No, thank you. Afia walked into the living room. I have a few questions that I hope you can answer honestly. Latosha tensed, but nodded. Of course, detective. You've worked for Mr. Dorkins for over 20 years. You must know him well. Better than anyone, Latosha said quietly. How did he really feel about Shanice? Were those feelings real or something else? Latosha was silent for a moment, as if weighing her words. Mr. Dorkins had been lonely since his wife's death. 15 years of loneliness. Shanice had brought joy and light into his life. He adored her. Perhaps it was more like a fatherly love than a romantic love, but it was a sincere feeling. And Shanice? Did she love him? She valued him, Latosha said carefully. Mr. Dorkins had given her something she'd never had. Stability, protection, the ability to not worry about tomorrow. But did she love him? Latosha sighed. I can't speak for the dead, detective, but I saw the way she looked at Mr. Dorkins. It wasn't the look of a woman in love. Were you aware of the large sums of cash Mr. Dorkins had been withdrawing in recent months? Latosha raised her eyebrows in surprise. No, I don't keep track of his finances. And about Shanice getting money from offshore. What? Now Latosha looked genuinely surprised. No, I don't know anything about that. Afia watched the housekeeper's reaction carefully. It seemed Latosha really didn't know about the strange financial transactions. Javonta Pinnock said that I should talk to you, that you know something important about Mr. Dorkins. Latosha turned pale. I don't know what he's talking about. I think you do, Afia said softly. Miss Davidge, I want to find Shanice's killer. If you know anything, please help me. Latosha clasped her hands together nervously. I can't. Mr. Dorkins has been so good to me all these years. Are you protecting him? Afia asked bluntly. Do you think he killed Shanice? No, exclaimed Latosha. Mr. Dorkins is not capable of murder. He wouldn't hurt a fly. Then what are you hiding? Latosha took a deep breath. All right, but it has nothing to do with murder. The first Mrs. Dorkins, she didn't die of a heart attack like everyone thinks. She killed herself. Why? She found out that Mr. Dorkins, had connections to certain people who helped him make his fortune. You're talking about criminal connections? Latosha nodded. As a young man, Mr. Dorkins worked for Victor Morello, the head of the local mafia. He was an accountant, helping to launder money. Then he started his own real estate business, but the connections remained. Mrs. Dorkins found documents to prove it. She couldn't live with it and took too many sleeping pills. Afia made a note in her notebook. That explained the strange financial transactions, but not Shanice's murder. Do you think Shanice could have found out about it? Perhaps, Latosha shrugged. She was a curious girl, always asking questions about Mr. Dorkins' past. After talking to Latosha, Afia decided to look up Shanice's friend that Marla had mentioned. Kiana Wright worked as a waitress at the same bar and was close to Shanice. Afia found her address and went to a small apartment on the outskirts of town. Kiana didn't open the door right away. A tall, slender girl with short hair and lots of piercings looked wary. Detective Draggs, Afia introduced herself. Can I ask you a few questions about Shanice Weiford? Kiana led her into the apartment, small but clean and cozy. I've already spoken to the police, she said, sitting down on the sofa. I don't know how else I can help. Tell me about Shanice. What was she like? What were her dreams? Kiana smiled sadly. Shanice always wanted more. We grew up in the same neighborhood, went to the same school. But unlike me, she never accepted what she had. She always wanted more. And that's why she started dating Lavelle Dorkins? In part, Kiana nodded. But don't think she was a mercenary bitch. Shanice just wanted a better life. And Dorkins, he was kind. He really cared about her. Did you know about her past relationships? With Tyrone Blackwell? Kiana tensed. Tyrone had been a mistake, a dangerous mistake. Shanice realized it when he began to control her every move. She was afraid of him. Do you think he could have come back and killed her? Tyrone? Kiana shook her head. No. He would have been more likely to kill Dorkins than Shanice. He was obsessed with her, wanted her back. And what about Javonta? Were they close? Very. Kiana nodded. After Aunt Shanice died, Javonta was her only family. They took care of each other. Though... She stopped talking. Though... Afia nudged her. They had argued a lot in recent months. Javonta had been against her relationship with Dorkins. Said she'd sold out to the old man. Shanice was angry with him. But they kept in touch? Yeah, sure. Shanice called him every day. Said she couldn't leave her brother, even if he didn't understand her choices. Afia wondered. If Shanice and Javonta were so close, why hadn't she told him about the offshore money? Or did he know but kept it hidden? Shanice had never mentioned any plans or secrets related to Dorkins. Kiana frowned. No. There was one odd thing, though. About a month before she died, she asked me about poisons, about how some of them worked. I thought it was for some online course at the time. Shanice said she wanted to be a nurse. Poisons? Afia was wary. What kind of poisons? I don't remember exactly. Something about plant toxins. She wondered if they could be found at autopsy. Back at the station, Afia sat at her desk for a long time, analyzing the information she had received. The picture was slowly becoming clearer, but there were still many questions. Why was Shanice interested in poisons? Where did she get the money from offshore? And most importantly, who shot her and why? Afia decided to question Javonta once more. His behavior seemed suspicious, and she sensed he was not telling her a lot. Javonta Pinnix lived in a small house on the outskirts of Clear Lake. It was already starting to get dark when Afia pulled up. She knocked on the door, but no one answered. Walking around the house, Afia noticed a light on in the garage. The door was ajar, and muffled voices came from there. "You were supposed to make it clean," a male voice shouted, "and now the cops are digging up on us." "It wasn't my fault the old man caught her," was Javonta's voice. "The plan was perfect." "Plan?" Afia opened the garage door abruptly. "What plan are you talking about, Mr. Pinnix?" In the garage, besides Javonta, was another man, a tall man with a tattoo on his neck. When he saw Afia, he rushed toward the back door, but the detective was faster. She blocked his path with her hand on her holster. "Tyrone Blackwell, if I'm not mistaken?" she asked. "I thought you were out of town." Tyrone froze, then slowly raised his hands. "I came back for Shanice's funeral," he said hoarsely. "And at the same time you decided to discuss some plan with her brother." Afia shifted her gaze to Javonta. "What did you two talk about?" Javonta and Tyrone exchanged glances. "It's not what you think, Detective," Javonta began. "What do I think it is?" Afia asked. "Enlighten me." "We didn't kill Shanice," Tyrone said firmly. "The old man did. We were trying to protect her." "Protect her? An odd way to protect her, planning to poison her fiancé." Both men flinched. "Where did you—" Javonta began but stopped short. "Kiana told of Shanice's interest in poisons," Afia said, "and Latosha about Dorkin's criminal past, plus some strange financial transactions. I'm starting to get the picture." Javonta slumped heavily in his chair. "Dorkins is not who he says he is. He's laundering money for the mob." "Shanice accidentally found the documents in his office. She called me in a panic. So instead of going to the police, you decided to blackmail him?" Afia guessed. "We wanted him to pay for everything he did," Tyrone interjected. "For all his dirty deeds. For the way he used Shanice." "But he found out about your plan and killed her?" Javonta nodded, tears welling up in his eyes. "She called me that night. Said she'd found poison in the tea box. I don't know how Dorkins found out, but he switched it. She was going to test her theory, make the tea and give it to her neighbor's dog who often came to visit. Shanice loved animals. She would never do that unless she was sure the tea was safe. But the poison was actually real," Afia continued. "And Dorkins knew about your plan?" "Yes," Javonta lowered his head. "Shanice was supposed to call me afterward, but she didn't. And in the morning I found out she was dead." Afia looked at both men carefully. The story sounded plausible, but something still didn't add up. "Where did you get the information about the poison? You're not experts, are you?" Tyrone and Javonta exchanged glances. "I have connections," Tyrone said reluctantly. "People who know these things. The same people who moved money into Shanice's offshore accounts?" Tyrone remained silent, but his look was eloquent enough. Afia pulled out the handcuffs. "Javonta Pinnix, Tyrone Blackwell, you are under arrest on suspicion of conspiracy to murder and extortion. You have the right to remain silent." "Wait!" exclaimed Javonta. "We didn't want Shanice to get hurt. It was her plan, but we never thought it would turn out like this." "Tell it to the judge," Afia cuffed Javonta's wrists. "Now I want to hear the whole truth. What really happened that night?" Afia Draggs met the morning of the third day of the investigation in her office, going over the testimony of Javonta Pinnix and Tyrone Blackwell. They had spent the night in a cell after their arrest, and both had requested a plea deal in exchange for a full confession. The story they told shocked even the veteran Afia. Shanice Weeford was actually planning to poison her elderly fiancé after the wedding. The plan didn't happen right away. At first, she genuinely appreciated Lavelle's kindness and saw in him a chance for a better life. But about 3 months ago, digging through the papers in his office, she found documents indicating Lavelle's connection to organized crime. There were also information about large sums of cash that passed through his real estate companies. Instead of going to the police, Shanice saw an opportunity to secure her future. She told Javante about the find, and together they devised a plan. Tyrone, with his connections in the underworld, helped them find a rare plant poison that is difficult to detect in an autopsy. Shanice was to marry Lavelle, and a few months after the wedding, poison him by putting the poison in his favorite tea. It would have looked like the natural death of an elderly man, and she would have inherited his fortune. But something went wrong. Lavelle obviously suspected something amiss, or overheard Shanice's conversation with Javante by accident. He shot her with his revolver that fateful night, and then threw the weapon out the window, having previously wiped off the prints. Afia leaned back in her chair, pondering the details of the case. There was enough evidence against Lavelle to make an arrest, but she wanted to hear his version of events. Besides, there was still the question of Latosha Davidge's role. The housekeeper clearly knew more than she was saying. Deciding not to delay, Afia set off for the Dorkins mansion. When she pulled up, a patrol officer was on duty at the gate, a precautionary measure put in place after the murder. "Is Mr. Dorkins home?" Afia asked, showing her badge. "Yes, ma'am," the officer nodded. "He hasn't been out since yesterday." Afia walked down the familiar driveway to the front door. No one answered the door for a long time. Finally, the door was opened by Latosha, looking even more tense than usual. "Detective Draggs," she licked her lips nervously. "Mr. Dorkins isn't feeling well. The doctor has prescribed bed rest. I need to speak to him, Miss Davidge. It concerns the murder of Shanice Weeford." Latosha hesitated, but then nodded and let the detective inside. "He's in his room. Go up the stairs. Third door on the right." Afia started to go up, but halfway up she turned around. "You're not coming with me?" Latosha was clearly nervous. "I have to make dinner." Something in her demeanor alerted Afia. Instead of continuing towards Lavelle's room, she suddenly turned around and walked quickly down the stairs. Latosha had already disappeared into the kitchen. The detective followed her and found the housekeeper engaged in the strange activity of hurriedly pouring the contents of some bottle into the sink. "What is that, Miss Davidge?" Afia asked sharply. Latosha flinched and dropped the empty bottle. Afia caught a glimpse of the word digoxin on the label, a heart medication that could be fatal in large doses. It's just Mr. Dorkins' old medicine," Latosha mumbled. "It's expired. I'm throwing it away." "In the sink?" Afia raised an eyebrow. "And why the rush now?" Latosha lowered her gaze, her shoulders slumping. "You don't understand," she whispered. "He's suffering. Every day, every minute. He didn't mean to kill her. It was an accident. He just wanted to scare her, to make her confess to the plot." "Latosha," Afia stepped forward. "What were you going to do?" "To put him out of his misery," the housekeeper replied quietly. "He asked me to do it. He said he couldn't bear prison, that he would prefer to leave with dignity." Afia gently took Latosha's hand. "Miss Davidge, I understand your loyalty to Mr. Dorkins, but what you were about to do was murder. You wouldn't have helped him. You would only have made things worse." Latosha burst into tears. "I love him," she confessed through her tears. "All these years. I was there for him when his wife died. I took care of him, supported him. And then that girl came along and turned his head. I knew right away she was after his money, but he wouldn't listen." "Did you help him hide the evidence after the murder?" Afia asked bluntly. Latosha nodded, not trying to deny it. "Yes, I heard a gunshot and ran into the bedroom. He was standing there with a gun in his hand, and she—" The housekeeper shuddered. "He was in shock, said she confessed to a plan to poison him, that she wanted to kill him for money. I took the gun, wiped off the prints, and threw it out the window. Then I helped Mr. Dorkins change his clothes, burned them with blood on them. You do realize that accessory to covering up a murder is a serious offense?" "Yes," Latosha straightened up, "and I am prepared to be punished. But first, let me talk to him, please." Afia hesitated, but then nodded. "Okay, but I'll come with you." They went up to the second floor together. Lavelle's room turned out to be spacious, but much more modest than one might expect. The elderly millionaire was lying on the bed, covered with a plaid. He looked even more haggard than he had on the day of the murder. "Lavelle," Latosha called softly. "Detective Draggs is here to talk to you." Dorkins turned his head slowly. His eyes were red from sleeplessness, his face gaunt. "Are you going to arrest me, detective?" he asked in a hoarse voice. "It depends on your story," Afia replied, sitting down in a chair by the bed. Lavelle chuckled bitterly. "What's there to tell? I killed her, shot her with my own revolver. I'm an old fool who believed that a young, beautiful girl could truly love a 70-year-old man." "Tell me what happened that night," Afia asked. Lavelle closed his eyes as if reliving those events. "We had dinner together. Shanice was especially affectionate, all the time talking about our future wedding, how she would take care of me. Then I went to work in the office, about 11 p.m. I went to the kitchen for water and heard her voice. She was on the phone, thinking I couldn't hear talking to Javonta about some poison, about how everything was ready, that I would die of natural causes a couple months after the wedding, and she would be a rich widow." Lavelle sighed heavily. "I was shattered. Couldn't believe it. Took the revolver out of the safe and went into the bedroom. I just wanted to scare her, make her confess. She denied it at first, then she started laughing. Said I was an old idiot, that she'd never loved me, that she'd used me from the start, that the poison was already in the house, that the plan was flawless. And that's when I fired. I don't know how I did it." "You didn't call the police," Afia remarked. "No," Lavelle shook his head. "I panicked. Latosha heard the shot and came running. She helped me." Afia wrote down his statement, feeling the story become clearer and more tragic with each word. "What about your ties to organized crime?" Shanice found documents pointing to that. Lavelle nodded tiredly. "Yeah, I used to work for Morello, laundered money through real estate deals, but that was a long time ago, over 20 years ago. I broke it off after my first wife died. But the large sums of cash you've been withdrawing in recent months?" "I was paying for my freedom," Lavelle grinned bitterly. "Morello came after me again about a year ago, threatened to talk about my past if I didn't cooperate again. I refused, but agreed to pay the silence fee." Afia nodded. That explained the financial transactions, but there was still one more question. "Mr. Dorkins, did you know Shanice was receiving money from offshore?" Lavelle raised his eyebrows in surprise. "No, this is news to me. It seems that Tyrone Blackwell, her ex-boyfriend, was also involved in the scheme. He helped with the search for the poison and may have financed the operation." Lavelle covered his face with his hands. "God, how naive I was. I thought a young, beautiful girl could love an old man for his kindness, but she just wanted my money, so much so that she was ready to kill me." There was a heavy silence in the room. Latosha was crying quietly in the corner. Afia looked at the broken elderly man and felt a strange sympathy. Yes, he had committed murder, but the circumstances were so— "What now, detective?" Lavelle asked, breaking the silence. "Are you going to arrest me?" Afia didn't answer right away. By law, she should have arrested him for murder and Latosha for accessory to covering up the crime. But something was holding her back. "Mr. Dorkins, the law says I should arrest you, but I want to check something first." She left the room and called the station. Forensics confirmed that a vial of plant poison, taxine, and extract from the yew tree, had indeed been found in Shanice's belongings. They also found correspondence with Javonta and Tyrone on her phone, discussing details of the plan, and in her purse, handwritten notes on the symptoms of poisoning and methods of disguising the poison. Back in the room, Afia found Lavelle and Latosha talking quietly. They fell silent when she entered. "We checked Shanice's things," Afia said. "The poison was found, as was evidence of a conspiracy to murder." Lavelle nodded. "So I'm not crazy then. She really was planning to kill me." "Yes," Afia confirmed. "But that doesn't justify murder. You should have gone to the police instead of taking justice into your own hands." "I know," Lavelle said quietly. "And I'm willing to be punished." Afia took a deep breath. She was faced with a moral dilemma she hadn't faced in her entire career. Legally, Lavelle should have gone to prison for murder, but he was a 70-year-old man who was defending himself against a conspiracy to kill him. He had acted out of passion after learning of the betrayal of the woman he loved. "Mr. Dorkins," she finally said, I will arrest you for the murder of Shanice Weiford. But I will also present in court all the evidence of the conspiracy against you. Given the circumstances, there's a chance the charge will be reclassified to manslaughter by passion." Lavelle nodded. "Thank you for your honesty, Detective. What's going to happen to me?" Latosha asked quietly. "You'll be arrested for accessory to covering up a crime," Afia replied. "But given your role and circumstances, a suspended sentence is possible." Latosha looked at Lavelle with such love and devotion that Afia looked away for a moment, feeling like she was intruding on something very personal. "I will wait as long as it takes," Latosha said, squeezing Lavelle's hand. "And I will visit you every day." Lavelle smiled weakly. "You know, Latosha, I've been such a fool. All these years, true love has been by my side, and I've been chasing an illusion." Afia gave them a few minutes to say goodbye, then called the patrol officers for a formal arrest. As Lavelle and Latosha were being taken away, she remained in the empty mansion, feeling a strange emptiness inside. The case was closed. The killer had been found and confessed. But there was no sense of victory or satisfaction that usually comes at the end of a successful investigation. Only the bitterness of realizing human weakness, greed, and dashed hopes. Afia walked slowly through the luxurious rooms of the mansion, now empty and lifeless. On the mantelpiece in the living room was a photograph of Lavelle and Shanice. They were smiling, embracing against the sunset. Two people bound by an illusion of love that had led both to a tragic end. In Lavelle's office, Afia found a folder of wedding planning documents, guest lists, menus, decoration sketches. Shanice had maintained the appearance of sincere feelings to the last, preparing for the wedding while simultaneously planning the murder of her fiancé. As she left the mansion, Afia thought about how thin the line was between love and obsession, between justice and revenge. Lavelle Dorkins had killed a man and had to answer for it. But didn't Shanice deserve to be punished for her plan? Weren't Javonta and Tyrone just as guilty? The law is not always the same as a moral sense of justice, and sometimes even the most experienced detective can't say with certainty where is the truth and where is a lie, where is the victim and where is the perpetrator. Afia got into the car and took one last look at the Dorkins mansion. Once it had been a home full of hope for the future, albeit one built on the sand of illusion. Now it was just another crime scene in her career, another broken dream, another story of how greed and deceit destroy human lives. She started the engine and pulled onto the road, leaving behind a luxurious mansion and a love story that never happened.